Hello, and welcome to the Chapter 12 section for Feudal Powers in Japan. Notes. We're going to be going through some various things, talking about the land of the rising sun. And talk about what's on the slide here, show here in a second. We have a samurai, we have an imperial palace, and we have the Japanese imperial flag from the World War II and prior time period. All right. Ladies and gentlemen. Exit document. Well, what do you think of Japanese music? Well, actually, we listen to it. So to answer this, if you've not done so yet, you're going to have to actually put in on YouTube traditional Japanese music, and you'll get some pretty cool results. Which martial art is best for self-defense? Judo, Japanese wrestling, karate, originated in China, perfected, some would say, in Japan. Kung Fu, Chinese boxing, focusing on orbital kicks and punches. Now, we've talked about that in our unit on China. So I'm just curious to see which one you think is the best for self-defense. Obviously, there's a bunch of other ones. And also, I didn't put jiu-jitsu on there because obviously jiu-jitsu is the best. So I just felt like it wouldn't be fair because jiu-jitsu is obviously the best. It includes a little bit of everything. And yeah, it's just not even a competition. You guys can tell how I'm biased in favor of jiu-jitsu. So anyways, letter C. Sorry, it's a little late here. Letter C, the samurai followed a code that placed honor above all else. What does this mean? Yeah, what's that mean to you? All right. So the origin of the name Japan comes from the idea or the word ribbon. This used to be a test question. Don't know why it's not anymore. I think I accidentally deleted it, actually, for real, off of the study guide. It really should be a test question because it's kind of a really important thing. But it means ribbon, origin of the sun, land of the rising sun, because the Chinese used to see the sun, ancient Chinese used to see the sun rise up over the South China Sea, and they saw the distant horizon line, and they knew there was a land out there, and they saw it rise up, and it looked like it came from that distant land. So Japan was called the origin of the sun. And this early China, early Japan, they did worship the sun too. And so many cultural ideas and stuff and institutions are going to be borrowed from China throughout the years. Japan is made up, for number one, of 4,000 islands, which is called an archipelago, about 1,200 miles in length. There's the different main islands: Hokkaido, Honshu, Shikoku, Kyushu. There you go. So the geographical advantage of Japan is it's got a mild climate. Plenty of rainfall, so the places you can grow grow crops on land is good farmland. Basically, the island has isolated location, so they developed a unique culture and natural barrier, the mountains, all that stuff for natural defense. Disadvantages. Number two, 12% of the land is suitable for farming. They have shortages of iron, coal, and oil. So the shortage of iron and other metals shows why the Japanese samurai swords were so valuable. It's because those materials they were made of were not readily available, and so either had to be traded for or mined in very rare circumstances. So also there's massive typhoons and tropical storms and earthquakes as well. One of the most famous mountains in Japan is Mount Fuji. Also, Fuji apples are delicious. That has absolutely nothing to do with this mountain. I just thought I would say that, and they are usually available at your local Aldi's store for a good discount price. All right, moving on. Number three. By the 1st century BC, prior to that, Japan was just a loose collective of families. Then eventually it came to be ruled by hundreds of clans. Each clan worshipped its own gods and goddesses. This practice of worshipping these gods became known as Shinto. And that is Shinto in the Japanese letters. That's number three. Within Shinto, there were these local clan gods and goddesses, usually represented by wooden idols. They also worshipped nature, and they also worshipped ancestors. So there was three parts to this early religion called Shinto, by the way, which still does play a role in Japanese culture. The kami were these spirits, they believed, the divine spirits that lived in nature. They believed that the more beautiful a tree or a waterfall or some element of nature, the more powerful that particular kami was that lived there. They believe that these things lived in powerful, like, waterfalls and stuff. And, all right. The Yamato clan. Let's talk about these guys. So in the 400s, about 300 years into, this time period in Japan, we're talking about starting around 100 AD. They have all the clans. By 400 AD, there was a group called the Yamato. And they claimed to be descended from the sun goddess. And that gave them the right to rule Japan. So the Yamato clan took over. They became the leading clan militarily and economically. And the Japanese emperor traditionally came from the Yamato clan early on. So you would have the Yamato clan, and the figurehead of the Japanese government was the powerful emperor. Okay, now foreign influences. Let's talk. Around the 400s, at the time of the Yamato clan, they started making more contact with mainland Asia, including Korea. Korean travelers in the mid-700s brought Buddhism to Japan for number 5. So Korean and Buddhism. These are all number 5, by the way. There's like 3 blanks for number 5, if you didn't notice. There's a few that are like that. So one of the things after Buddhism arrives, it does actually go very well with Shinto. So Buddhist rituals become Shinto rituals. They're blended together. So Chinese Buddhism and Japanese Buddhism are going to look like 2 far different things. Because in Japanese Buddhism, there's Shinto and Buddhist rituals that are combined and kind of cross over. Now, why is that the case? Well, also for number 6, don't forget to write this down. Shinto gods and goddesses were worshipped in Buddhist temples. So the 2 are basically combined. In Buddhism, there is no god, essentially. So there is, Buddhists can believe in a god, but it's not, in that particular religion, as we talked about in the earlier chapter, it's focused on like enlightenment. And so Shinto actually kind of blends perfectly. Like the ethic of Shinto kind of goes in line with Buddhism. They don't really contradict. And so therefore, Japan, when they got Buddhism, they're like, oh, cool, we can keep our local religion and keep this. So, all right, moving down. You can see a lot of Japanese society, especially like this started in around the 700 time period, 700 AD. They started building these amazing structures that are probably taken a lot from ideas taken from Chinese architecture, from trade and seeing these things. But the wealthy nobles of the Yamato clan built these elaborate palaces, beautiful courtyards, rock gardens. We looked at pictures of rock gardens, which are supposed to be for like different samurais for meditation and stuff. Built these beautiful things. So they got their handwriting actually from China because they were trading with China a lot, and they started using their handwriting and then just kind of made it their own. They also borrowed ideas like cooking, gardening, drinking tea, hairdressing, certain types of clothing. I believe white tea is really popular with them back then. 600 AD, there was a guy named Prince Shotoku. He went to visit China quite a bit, and he liked their kind of centralized government and decided to base the Japanese government off of that. So you started noticing that you had like a centralized government, a clan, an emperor, and then all the peasants outside of that. Okay, so usually the leading clan, like the Yamato clan, would have what's called an imperial court. That's your emperor and all the nobles beneath him. Well, around 700, there was, in the 700s, there was a group of nobles who moved from Nara to Heian. So all of the Yamato clan basically uproot themselves and move from Nara to a town called Heian. And these people were nobles. That's the 3rd part of number 10. They established a court society where you have a emperor, you have all of these nobles, and then beneath them, you have all the peasants outside. And they lived in these ginormous buildings, and they practiced martial arts, they practiced arts, painting, writing beautiful haikus, weaving beautiful tapestries. They also, so they spent a lot of their days in ritual, artistic pursuits. learning what we would now call Wing Chun and other Tai Chi and different martial arts. So the rules basically for living in this city were very strict. Length of swords, color of robes, titles, everything is kind of monitored. And so what you think of with the traditional wear of Japan, as seen here, comes from the Heian court. Okay. Etiquette for number 11. Or I'm sorry, whoopsie daisies. Etiquette for number 14. There we go. So people were usually quiet and reserved in Heian. Public laughter was actually frowned upon. A lot of these principles are taken like eventually from like Confucianism. And it's actually still pretty prominent in East Asia today. In fact, like back in ancient Japan, like in Heian, if you were spitting publicly, it would be considered to be incredibly rude. Being loud and rambunctious in public was considered to be incredibly rude. Some of these things are practiced today, actually, in East Asia. In fact, we talked about in some places like Singapore, spitting is like the ultimate offense, especially if someone spits gum. There are people known as the cane police. They are actual policemen with canes, and they will literally beat people with canes for spitting in public. And so they take that really, really serious. It's considered to be highly offensive. So yeah, just make sure you do some research before you travel so you don't accidentally offend people. Also, the cane police sound absolutely terrifying, and I would not want to get beaten with a cane. So I would definitely do my research before going to any place. And also, spitting gum is just rude anyways, so it's also littering. So anyways, ladies and gentlemen, number 14. There we go. So saving face was also practiced by the people of Heian. Saving face is where you spare someone embarrassment. If they fall on the sidewalk, you're not supposed to help them up. You're supposed to just pretend you didn't see it. Sparing people embarrassment. The Tale of Genji was written by the Heian court in the 11th century. It's known as the world's first novel. Lots of artistic styles and other things come out of that time period. Well, unfortunately, during the Heian period, the Yamato clan and all these other clans that had combined together within Heian, they start to fall apart. And that's because there was a family that kind of became prominent within the Heian court known as Fujiwaras. They were super corrupt, and unfortunately, around 1000 AD, power started to slip from Heian. Local landowners, landowners started living away from the capital. They started moving away from Heian. They also started setting up private armies. The countryside becomes lawless. Pirates were all over the place. So people start selling their land for protection. They start selling their land to warlords. And so eventually, warlords are going to take over Japan. They all move out of Heian, and they start gathering armies, and they offer the peasants protection in turn for their land. So pretty soon, Japan is controlled by warlords who live in castles like this, and they run samurai armies. So central government dissolves, and Japan turns into what's called a feudal system run by these lords. Rival lords are constantly at war with each other. Samurai who guard them are known as one who serves. They're like local bodyguards. Now, the samurai have a code of ethics. Every female who is married to a samurai is also technically a samurai as well. They'll fight with a katana, a bow and arrow, leather armor that is weaved together. The katanas have millions of layers of steel, and they practice what's called bushido, the way of the warrior. Reckless courage, reverence for the gods, fairness, generosity towards those weaker than yourself, trying to protect the weak. Unfortunately, a lot of the samurai would actually, would die this horrible death where they would impale themselves with a sword rather than being captured by their enemies. And they were so strict on honor that the one samurai would stand next to another, and like as they were impaling themselves, if they chickened out to preserve their friend's honor, they would actually decapitate them. And so these guys were like very, very strict about their code of ethics, and dying an honorable death was considered greater than living a long life. They believed. But also, feudal lords also fought by sending assassins to kill each other. And those assassins were ninjas. They were covert fighters. And eventually, the chief warlord was known as the supreme general of the emperor's army. So Japan started being controlled by these chief warlords who were called shoguns for number 18. And then you would have lesser lords below them. Guys, finally for number 19, because I'm pretty much out of time, you can read this slide if you want to pause it. Who would win in a fight, samurai or ninja? Pick one. good evidence. You can look at the weapons. We talked about it in class. Consider that. Give me 5 good reasons. All right, guys, that's it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Have a good day, and Greenville, PA.